Well, this is gonna be fun. 5 o'clock on a Thursday. Prater in the Ballgame, Idaho Sports Talk. Appreciate you guys. And I want to text a question out and get an answer. 208-424-9300. Give me an individual Boise State single season record that you think is more difficult to break than the Boise State single season sack record of 20. The man who did that sits to my left in between myself and Prater as we continue to do this segment honoring the Boise State football team of 1994, which he was a member of. Chris Wing hanging out with us in the RowPaint.com studio. Chris Wing, welcome to Idaho Sports Talk. This is going to be a lot of fun. How we doing, Wing Dog?
Hey, we're doing great. Thanks, Johnny. Appreciate you and Prater having me here today.
Going to be awesome. Your thoughts? I mean, is anybody? No one. Well, let me get to that in a second. We'll let the texts come in if they think there's a tougher record to break. Let's start with 1994. And what's this all mean to you, Chris? We've had two of your ex-teammates on the show yesterday. We're going to have your beast running back, Casey Adams, on the show tomorrow. Prater was the beat writer of that team, so you guys know each other well. What's this all mean to you that team, the 94 team, the magic carpet ride, gets kind of its day in the sun this weekend?
Well, we're honored to be here. And obviously, you know, a team like even right now, currently with the team the way it is, the Boise State team, those type of teams don't come around very often. So it's just an honor to be with your teammates and recognize, you know, there was a lot of goals set that year that were achieved. And, you know, we've been doing some projects around the team and whatnot, and listening to Pokey Allen. I've been recording the Pokey Allen shows from that year and listening to him and talk about the team and the way they came together and how fun they were to coach. It's an enlightening experience. And, you know, 30 years ago, it's a long time.
It's crazy. Chris Wing with us. And you were a younger guy, at least academically, eligibility wise, on that 94 team, and you're seeing dudes like Joe O'Brien and Brian Smith flying around out there, Miller at corner, all these big names on that defense. Chris Wing, your major year came in 96 when you had all those sacks. What did 94 teach you, you know, as the Boise State sack man? I'm sure you learned a lot of that on this 1994 team.
Well, definitely. I mean, we had an emphasis on getting to the quarterback, putting pressure on the quarterback. You know, I've always said the defensive line is kind of the pressure cooker of the defense.
Yeah.
And, you know, championship teams have championship defenses, and our defense was a crew of individuals and personalities that really played some team football. And, you know, I always say this, you know, there's a difference between good and great teams. And typically that's just one word, and that's the love of team, or love. And, you know, the experiment that is a football locker room, it's a very interesting thing. And kind of like what Spencer's doing right now, I can tell those guys love each other. They're playing for each other. They're willing to sell out a little extra.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what it's all about. You know, Boise State's always going to have a good football team, but are they going to be great is the question.
As the skeptical guy, as the outside observer in 1994, that's a great analogy. You guys really were a brotherhood. You guys really were a team united and came together. I wanted to ask you real quick, taking a step back, Redmond High School, you spent 4 years in the Air Force, and then you came to Boise State, but you didn't come traditionally through the recruiting services. If I remember the story right, you walked into some dude's office, a coach, and I don't remember which coach it was, and said, I want to play football for you guys. Can you give me a shot? Did it really work? And that first year in 94, the memory, the reunion that we're talking about for this year, you were a walk on that team. Is that true in terms of you walking in and asking a coach just to give you a shot?
100% true. It was Tom Osborne. I walked into his office, as which I did to a couple schools around here. I did it at Wazoo. I did it at U of I. I did it at Boise State. I was just trying to sell myself.
Disappointing that Idaho said no.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's another funny story. It was with Nick Holt, but that's for another time.
Okay.
But what the thing that I remember about it is Tom Osborne was as nice as could be to me, you know, and then literally 2 days later, I get this is back when we had answering machines, 30 years ago, I get a call from Pokey Allen on my phone up at the Air Force Base in Mountain Home. And he's, you know, with his gravelly voice telling me, hey, we'd love to see you come down, you know, and that was all. I just needed somebody to be nice and want me. And I was there.
Everybody's got the pokey voice, Prater.
it's
Everybody we have in who talks about the 94 team, when they quote pokey, they go like this. I don't want the wrong people asking questions. I don't want, like, it's funny.
That's
have
100%
that
true.
They have that pokey voice. Chris Wing with us, one of the great pass rushers in Boise State history.
I want to go to the end because then I want to come back and Ballgame, and I kind of want to interrogate you about that 96 season. Then we certainly want to talk about today and the art of the sack. But when your football career ended, and again, Chris Wing, 1996, 20 sacks. It's still a record that stands today. And according to Johnny Ballgame, it may be a record that stands forever. But you went off and dabbled in the NFL a little bit. And you played with some dudes that are going to help you in terms of sacks. You went to the Patriots, and Pete Carroll cut you, but Pete Carroll certainly was that kind of a impact guy, influence guy. And then you ended up with Bill Parcells and watching film and playing with him and learning from Bill Parcells. What did you learn from those two guys about the sack that we can talk about today?
Well, it was a different game in the NFL. There was guys running around like Willie McGinnis and Chris Slade and Mo Lewis and, some pretty integral pass rushers there in the NFL. But pressuring the quarterback and speeding up the offensive play, the offense hates that, first off. Yep. And that was one thing, the tempo of the game. A defensive line, if you look at some of the greatest football teams in history, you could look at, Minnesota Vikings. They've had some really ominous defensive lines, and pressuring the quarterback, speeding up the tempo of the offense is something that, Bill Parcells was all about ball control and controlling the time of the game and the clock and everything. So that played right into his favor. But, just rushing the quarterback, there's so many different ways you can affect a football game as a defensive lineman, and a sack, a tip ball, a forced fumble, anything. It's a very interesting dynamic when you get a defensive lineman that can affect a football game just by sacking the quarterback.
32 sacks in the career of Chris Wing, 20 of which coming in that 1996 season. We will talk about some of the details on that season. Prater was breaking it down, and it was maybe the worst team in Boise State history. We're being serious on that. Chris Wing admits that, but yet, one of the great individual accomplishments happened in that series, and that season has kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit. So I want to get there, but first, the serious stuff, Chris Wing, and I do mean serious stuff.
Prepare yourself. Who knows where this is going?
Apparently, I guess it would have been the Idaho Statesman, but there was an article about 31, maybe 31 years ago written about Chris Wing that really bothered your mother all the way in the Seattle area. And we have a lot of these Prater pissed off so-and-so stories, but Prater got under your mother's skin, huh, Wing?
My mom's kind of sensitive too. So
what was the article? I have no idea. What happened?
I was a troubled youth a little bit in high school and things, not like my kids, who are
perfect,
perfect angels,
little angels, George and Henry. They're probably out there listening. I just want to tell them I love them, and my wife as well. But, the problem child. I think that was the title.
That was the title of the article,
the
Prater.
problem child.
The problem child.
Was that an actual
and then
headline?
There's a picture of Chris Wing underneath.
Yeah.
Dude.
Prater was an interesting, beat writer, because he would hit you from every angle. So it's great.
In 1994, you guys loved me because you played for the national championship game, and I wrote what I saw. In 1996, you hated me. As a matter of fact, you guys voted not to talk to me for the entire season. I'm assuming you voted for that as well. And I get it. You guys were all trying to scramble and save what was really a tough, emotional season. Pokey was literally dying before our very eyes, and we all know that story. So tell your mother that I apologize, and I'm sorry, and that you grew up to be a fine young man and a big part of our community.
The problem child. Prater, you put that's really what the title of the article was, Wing?
Yeah, it was.
The problem child.
You have that hanging up in your garage now?
I deserve it. I really do.
What is Chris Wing? What the hell is the art of the sack? When you hear a question, what is the art form of sacking the quarterback? No one's done it at the level you have here at Boise State. How would you answer that question?
Well, there's a lot of things that go into, pass rushing. The first thing, the most important thing is your get off. I mean, if you can't get off on the ball, then you're already a step behind. So I'm not going to say I cheated, but I definitely anticipated when the ball was going to be snapped. I felt like I was so in tune with the offensive line, the cadence of the quarterback, the center, his hand all the way down to the football, and that's why coaches want you in shape so you can breathe and concentrate and see what's going to happen in front of you and kind of get into that zone. And I would time the snap as much as I could and get off on the ball. And then you got to have a plan. You can't just run up field and flail away like the Tasmanian devil. So you got to have a plan. And I had 6 to 10 pass rush moves that I'd bring at you at any moment. And typically I'd start off with the bull rush just to let you know that I could back you up at 235
Love the
pounds.
bull rush.
Yeah. And that's, if you start with the bull rush, then they never know when that's coming. So you work off that. And spin moves, arm under, over, ole, swats, you name it. Joe O'Brien did a great job of giving me all his knowledge.
He did.
Barry Sachs, to talk about coaches a little bit, the strength coach, who I sometimes refer to as the eyes and ears of the institution, that was a big driver in our success in 94. And even going into 96, with less scholarships, making the jump to 1A, our strength coach still had us putting up unbelievable numbers and sport specific movements. And, I watched the strength coach here, who's a protege, I believe, of Big House, Ben Hilgart, and he's the real deal too. And I can just tell there's a good relationship there because that's the guy your players see every day. And that's kind of the glue, the bond of the whole deal. But back to the sack, I learned from some of the best, and then I really mentally figured it out at the end. And that's what happened in 96.
It's funny that you say that, because I was just going to say, and you showed up in 1993 or 4, and it's funny, Big House, Joe Ken, the strength and conditioning coach, you ended up in the NFL. He was unconventional. He was the guy that had you throwing empty beer kegs over pole vault bars.
Yep.
Is for strength and motivation and all that kind of stuff. But
flipping tractor tires.
There you go.
Yeah.
But you showed up, I think you were like 210, dude, and you left at 250, but you still at 210. I thought you were always mentally strong. And then you evolved into this physical beast of a man. You were always kind of tough, but adding that 30, 40 pounds of leverage, which that's the word you guys love. By the time you were 250 in 1996, you were a physical beast of a man. And that's why the NFL wanted to come after you a little bit. So that 20 sack season, what was the magic there? What are the memories? Did you have a specific one memory? And how did 20 sacks come together?
Seriously.
Just describe that, dude.
Just relentlessness, I think, studying the film. I would give half or all of those sacks back to have a winning season that year.
Yeah.
But I just made it a very personal situation between me and the offensive lineman, and I was going to beat him every time if I could, not just on pass rushing, on run plays too. And, it's unfortunate, I have the distinction of being on one of the best teams in Boise State history and one of the worst. But those were the growing pains we had to go through in that year, jumping from 1AA to 1A. And, I remember going to Arizona State, battling against Juan Roque, who was a second round pick, getting a sack or two on him. And
you did.
You guys were like 7-7 in that game at one point. Kibi, I think a big pass to Kibi. And
we actually were up on them. That went away fairly quickly.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting, and we played a lot of like Fresno. There was a lot of offensive linemen that were drafted that year. So I was going up against some tough guys.
And you kicked their ass.
Well,
Seabass.
I like to say that I like to beat them as much as possible the whole game. And then after a game, we shake hands and, have a beer. So
it seems like the type of guy you are, but knowing you've seen you, you're still a big dude. I can see how he really got after quarterbacks. 20 sacks in 1996. Do you want to keep your record? Do you want to see somebody break it? You win either way, because if somebody breaks it, it means this football team is kicking ass again, and they're talking about Chris Wing constantly. But if not, dude, that is a nice little nugget, Chris. 20 sacks in a year. I don't think anybody breaks that, dude.
I'd love to see somebody break it out, actually, because that means Boise State's doing well and we're winning. And we're used to winning here. And I just absolutely love what Spencer's doing with the team. He leads with the Lord. I love that. He's ultimate optimistic coach. You could tell the players love him. You could tell the players love each other. So, and we've got a Heisman candidate. It's just every 30 years, weird things happen. So, not to say it's weird, but it's kind of football is cyclical. You'll see some interesting things. And I do embrace and love the fact that we're seeing success and this team's protecting the blue,
That's
we're
big.
we're not losing on the blue, so that's a big deal.
Boise State school record for sacks in a season for the team is 49. It's happened twice, 1996 and then in 2010. This year's Boise State team has 38. They're 11 away from a school record. Chris, as you watch this year's team, and it sounds like you're totally dialed in, what do you see about this defensive line? And let's talk about guys like Ahmed Hassanin. Who stands out? What do you see collectively as a group, and who stands out for you?
Well, Ahmed, right off the bat, he's been getting better and better since he's been here, that's the whole point. You come to college is, try to improve yourself, learn. And you could tell the coaches have really blossomed him into a great player. And, the whole line is impressive. We've got guys on the interior too. I'm very impressed with the defense as a whole. I love Coach Cutter out there. I'm loving everything I'm seeing. Sometimes I watch the offense too, and I just see the stuff that Coach Cutter's doing, and I just start giggling because it's funny. I'm seeing tight ends being used, high lows, all this Y bump flats, naked bootlegs.
Nice.
It's great. But the defense is playing great. The offense is playing great. We got special teams moving. This team is really fun to watch, and most of all, I just like watching the coaches. They're excited. They're having a great time. This is what it's all about.
And you make your home in Boise. You've settled down here. Your family is here. You're still a diehard Boise State fan. You help the team. You're even taking money out of your own pocket, giving it to dudes who get sacks on the blue. We'll talk about that in a second. But if anybody listening wants to ask Chris Wing a question on his career and whatnot, call 208-424-9300. JP, get us like one caller if we have it, because I know we're short on time, but there might be that person chomping at the bit that's always wanted to ask Chris Wing a question. Now is your opportunity. Chris, you got a big brown paper bag. Looks like there's some gifts in there. What did you bring Prater a present?
I brought Prater a present, and I brought you a present too, Johnny. This is for you, Prater. Go ahead. Open that up. I know
Prater now has a box.
Yeah,
gift opening on the radio, Chris, isn't the easiest.
I'm not sure why I
pull
like
that
this.
out of there.
What is this?
So, Prater, I don't know if you're into vinyl, but
I am into vinyl. I have a record player.
Awesome. This is probably the best rock and roll album that I've heard in 20 years. And
Jack White,
baby, the No Name album. This is the groovinest rock and roll album I've heard in a decade at least. So I know Prater digs music, so I'm looking forward to hear what his review is. And then Johnny,
well, first of all, though, I mean, is it because this is a blue? It looks like a blue turf.
How ironic is that, Prater?
Yeah,
I mean,
seriously,
like
blue turf, man.
I mean,
it is.
Show everybody this thing because
blue turf.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Jack White needs to do a pop-up on Broncos Stadium. He's doing pop-up concerts. Maybe he can
let's
come through Boise.
Let's make that happen.
The old school guys still say Broncos Stadium too.
I'm
it's
not
okay.
I'm not on social media or any of that malarkey, so you guys might have to tweet or
Chris.
Very, very cool, man.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
Johnny.
What way? Yeah, he has a picture.
Johnny,
frame
this is for you. This beware. This picture is a little gangster like the guy in the picture, but I know a little bit about you, and I just wanted to get you.
Oh
this.
yeah.
Oh no, are you shit? Are you crapping me?
Yeah. It's a signed Sean Kemp photo with GP in the background, and
He loves Gary Payton.
I know you love Gary, Johnny. So a couple
Chris
cards
Wing,
for
I
him.
don't deserve this. It's an autographed picture of Sean Kemp. What? Chris Wing, 20 sacks. Yeah, is anybody ever going to break that record? Is there a tougher record to break than Chris Wing's 20 sacks in 1996?
Chris Wing,
Thank
what are your memories going to be like tomorrow night? What are they going to be like tomorrow? You're going to get together with 50, 60-year dudes, the coach, Mason, Borges, Ken.
Yeah.
All these guys are coming. Then you're going to be honored on Saturday. You're not, well, maybe you are a little bit of an emotional guy, especially as you get older. But this is going to be a big emotional weekend for a lot of you guys.
It is. And it's just going to be so good to see these guys. Some of them I haven't seen for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them I've seen quite often. But
we saw DeJuan Miller this morning.
yeah,
I get to run into him.
I see him every day.
That's
at
what
work,
he said.
so
That's what he said.
You guys run together.
I get tired of seeing D-Mill.
We told him we were going to have you on the show today. He wasn't impressed.
I absolutely love DeJuan Miller and his whole family, his girls, his wife. They're the best people. That's the interesting thing. I'm going to get to see, and time is fleeting. You know, like I'm 53 years old now, and I'm going to get to spend a couple hours with people that I wouldn't normally get to spend time with, and I'm going to embrace every second of it because life's short, man.
How much do you love the fact that Jeremiah Dickey and Boise State, before we get you out of here, Boise State legend Chris Wing, I always say this, but that sack record, what you've had, you know, a Hall of Fame level career on the blue, but just getting to do this. I mean, when you're a part of a special team like that, you want the school to do this every 10 years or so you can come back and hang out with your buddies. Must be really appreciative.
It's a blessing. We're so thankful. I have not met AD Dickey yet, but I heard him tell the football team, this was about a year ago, that he loves them. And let me tell you, we've come a long way since 94, haven't we, Mike?
Your AD in 94 would not have told you he loved you.
I mean, nothing against me and Gene Blaumeier, who I love as well, but to hear an athletic director tell players he loves them, that's a great thing. And that just tells you where our program's heading, in the right direction.
Well, I loved hanging out with you guys in 94. You were always good to me. It's still one of my all-time favorite teams. I've got to know you and hang out with you for a little bit over these last 30 years and appreciate what you guys do. So nicely done. Thanks for coming in today. Thanks for the memories. And what a special time to be a Boise State fan.
We have a caller we have to put on the air with Chris. We have to. I've been threatened.
That's okay.
It could be one of my kids, probably.
Who we got, JP? Who's on the line?
Oh, this is the Big House.
Big House.
Is this the former Boise State strength coach, Joe Ken?
That's who it is, my friends.
Holy shnikey.
The last time we had Joe Ken on this show, and I don't remember why, but you were still with the Carolina Panthers. You were a strength coach in the NFL, and I know you're still kicking ass out there. And I think we're going to give all the credit for Chris Wing's success to you, Joe Ken.
That's why I called. He knows why he's out there today. Yeah. Chris is one of my dudes. And, you know, it's funny because there's not many of those guys who was on the 94 and 96 team that saw both. And Chris had to persevere, the best of the best and the worst of the worst. But, like, people don't understand. I've said this to this day on that 96 team, out of all the years I coached college, people don't realize that was the best in-season strength training program I had in the 8 years I was at Boise State.
Before 94.
Yeah, and I think just based on what I said earlier, the evolution of Chris's body. I mean, his mind was there, but his body was so different when he left. That had to be all you, Big House.
Well,
I mean, not that Chris Wing didn't put in the work.
It's always about the players, but again, you know, we were extremely fortunate with all the sports there of how much that they believed in what we were trying to accomplish in the strength program. And as you know, some guys embrace it and some guys don't. And Chris, having been a little bit more mature, coming from the military, I think he understood that time is of the essence for him. And he understood that, again, he had really good coaching. Barry Sachs was ahead of his time as a D-line coach. Absolutely. And he got to work with guys like Joe O'Brien. Pete Kwiatkowski was around, and you know, Pete's one of the all-time greats. And when you see that and someone has potential, I mean, Chris Wing was really the first time when we had more than one or two scouts come in and visit because of what he was able to accomplish on the blue.
That's interesting to hear.
Chris, thoughts on that?
Well, the program starts with the strength coach, you know, and you didn't want Big House calling you a slappy when you came in the weight room. So
slappy.
Yeah. If you were a slappy, you knew
that's such a strength coach word.
You had to hit the bricks. So, you know, to a player, if you ask about Big House, and not just the football team, I mean, he brought people from basketball, track, a power lifter, you know, just unbelievable stuff. And, you know, the strength coach is the start. It's the foundation of the program, bottom line.
Big House Ken, we appreciate you stopping by, giving us a call, and wishing one of your favorites very well. I know it's going to be a busy weekend. Chris Wing, an honor to have you in the studio. Thank you so much for the gifts. I will hang this somewhere in the Row Paint studio.
Love
Maybe
it.
Prater will as well. He's actually going to take that home and listen to it probably.
Yes, sir.
Chris Wing, enjoy this weekend. What an honor.
Appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome.
Prater in the ball game.
Love
From the Beacon Plumbing Traffic Studios, this is Ticket Traffic.
Not good going